It should be clear that the death penalty does just the opposite of promoting decency and respect for life. It dehumanizes people and promotes murder. It can never be applied fairly, states John Morrison. So there are 5 different types of ways a person can be executed. It's lethal injections, electrocutions, gas chambers, firing squad, and hanging. In the article CNN published in 2015, they state that there are 31 states in the U.S. that have death penalties. Death penalties are used for criminals who commit murder, and death penalties also spend millions of dollars or more, and mentions the article Death Penalty Information Center. I learned about this topic like last year, and I wanted to elaborate more about it. I'm in favor of death penalty, and I think it should be banished for good. Having death penalties doesn't do the state any good and shouldn't be enforced. First, I will talk about why the death penalty is causing problems. Then I will talk about some. First, I will talk about problems, and then I will talk about some causes, and then last, I will talk about some solutions. Why is death penalty becoming a problem to society? It's becoming a problem because it's based off of racism, and they kill innocent lives. So, for example, when someone is sentenced to death penalty, they are committed. When someone is sentenced to a death penalty and are not guilty, they get executed, but that's not like fair because they didn't do it, so you can't really take like their lives back. Race also plays a big role, and in the article Death Penalty published in 2015, they state that those who murdered whites are most likely to be sentenced than those who murdered blacks. Money is also an issue, and it costs more to go. Okay, so money is also an issue, and it costs more to go through a death penalty than to put someone in trial. There is also a new drug that is being revealed, and it's called the protocol, states the LA Times, published in 2015, and if this new drug comes into action, then it can bring back the death penalty after 10 years. Now that I have talked about the problems to death penalties, now I will talk about the causes. So the death penalty is caused to people who commit murders. This is the way of capital punishment. The states with death penalties have more murder crimes than the states that don't have death penalties. People believe that you have to be tough on crime. Violence can increase because people may think that it is okay to be violent. It cannot be right to teach people that killing is wrong by killing them, mentions the journal Ending Death Penalty published in 2015. Murder causes you to be sentenced to death. You don't learn anything from being sentenced to death. So, for example, when parents punish you, they try to get you a message across, and you try to fix your mistakes. So when you are put into murder, you can't fix your mistakes because you're already put in. When you're put into the death penalty, you can't fix your mistakes because you're already basically gonna die. So being sentenced for life is just as bad as going through a death penalty. So I don't think going through death penalty is okay. Now that I've talked about the problems and causes, now we'll talk about some solutions. Instead of having death penalties, you can find like other possible outcomes and alternatives. So you can just be sentenced to prison for life. Anna Zamora from LA Times, published in 2015, states that the only solution is to keep murderers in prison until they die. It is also cheaper to keep these criminals sentenced in prison, and it keeps these offenders off the streets. They can fix their mistakes, and many learn from their mistakes, so they prevent themselves from committing crimes, so they wouldn't go back into the cell, because the cell is basically just like that. They can also go to rehab centers, so they can try to turn their lives around. They can go towards the right path, and they can have like a better future. Or you can vote off death penalties in 2016, which might come into play, but they're still not sure yet. Now you have a better understanding of the death penalties and why I think they should be abolished. So first, I talked about the problems that death penalties are causing. Then I talked about some causes, and then last I talked about some solutions that will help that can replace death penalties. Keep in mind that not just murderers, but also innocent people of color are being sentenced to death. It costs millions of dollars to go through this procedure, and it doesn't do the country or states any good, because we are already economically struggling.